This is the Initiates Podcast. Here, we create space to explore the path of initiation as we reawaken the forgotten wisdom that resides within us all. I am your host and guide, Natalie Grace. Join me every Thursday for an enlightening exploration of contemporary spirituality. It's my honour to journey with you. Welcome, friends. Today's episode is a continuation of last week's deep dive into energy and vibration. We left off last week discussing emotional frequency, the purpose of low and high vibrational states, and I also shared some of my awakening story where I woke up to my truth as an energetic being. And speaking of vibration, my cat Bread has just jumped on my lap and is doing a big purr, so I might share that with you. It's on theme. So today I'll be discussing the energy of superstition. Working as a tarot reader, I am very familiar with the concept of superstition and the energy it holds. I also have a very personal connection to the superstitious state of being and how powerful that can be. It's an incredible story and my earliest initiation into mysticism and the powers of energy and belief. And it shaped my awakening, it's shaped how I see the world, it's shaped how my spiritual gifts have developed, and it's definitely shaped my practice as a tarot reader, which I'll share more about in the episode. It's a truly unique story. It involves me as an 8-year-old, a literal ritual initiation of Catholicism and a traumatic event. And my story holds a trauma that I've only recently alchemized into being empowering for me. I know that telling this story is a part of my healing journey, so even though it was a little difficult, I'm so grateful for the safety of this space to be able to share it all with you. And lastly, I'll explore the concept of energetic protection, the times when it's needed, and as always, some tips from me and my guides on easy ways that you can protect your energy and keep your vibrations high. Now, let's journey. And that leads me to talk about superstition, because all these trends around kind of spiritual practices, spiritual rituals, there's definitely a place for energetic protection ritual, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later on. But what I'm seeing around the trends to do with energetic protection on social media mostly is that there's so much superstition and a lot of it is incredibly disempowering. So let's talk about what a superstition is first. A superstition is any belief or practice considered by non-practitioners to be irrational or supernatural. Also attributed to fate or magic, perceived supernatural influence, or fear of that which is unknown. And I just lifted that off Wikipedia because I thought it was a pretty good summary of what superstition is. So in my research, I found a couple of surveys and studies that were pretty interesting. There's a psychologist named Stuart Weiss who wrote a book called Believing in Magic, The Psychology of Superstition. And he found that believing in superstitions is actually quite common, that some polls have found that over 50% of Americans consider themselves at least a little superstitious. And his theory as to why this is that superstitions offer a feeling of control where control isn't possible. So life holds a lot of uncertainty, And this is where superstitions take their power, when we feel out of control. Another survey I read about was conducted in 2021 from the UK, and it was a survey of 2,000 adults. And again, it was similar numbers. 45% of respondents had a fear of the unknown, and that would lead them to superstitious behaviours such as saluting magpies, hoarding lucky pennies, and being extra careful around mirrors. And so I wanted to know a bit more about the source of these superstitions, the origins of these superstitions. And what I found was really interesting. I found that superstitions are very culturally significant, and they often have to do with connecting with the divine. So I came across an article which was super interesting. It was an interview with a man named Benjamin Radford, who is a research fellow at the Centre for Inquiry and member of the American Folklore Society. He is a superstition expert, and he explained the origin stories of some common superstitions. So knocking on wood. Knocking on wood is something we do when we've said something bad and we don't want it to come true. And originally, this superstition just involved touching any wood. And Radford states that medieval churches would be filled with wood back in the day, and that wood was claimed to be from the cross. So if you were a believer, then you would touch the wood to touch divine energy, to get that link with the divine, and to be gifted good luck. So in connecting with the divine, you would be safe, you'd be taken care of. Breaking a mirror, here's another interesting one. The mirror is a tool for divination. So people use mirrors to scry. Mirrors are also seen as portals in mysticism. So they hold an incredibly supernatural power. And breaking a mirror and the image within the mirror, because at all times mirrors hold an image, right? A moving image. The breaking of this was thought to violate its divinity. And so this would result in whoever broke the mirror receiving bad luck. So again, it's this link to divinity and to the supernatural. I'll give you one more. Saying bless you when someone sneezes. A lot of people have opinions about this because bless, if you think about how bless sounds, it's be less, bless, be less. And they don't really like those words being projected onto them, and fair enough. Spelling is something we'll get to in the future. But it was once believed that when you sneezed, evil spirits could enter your body, that could come into your energetic field. And so by intervening and blessing someone as they sneeze, it was a way to ward off evil spirits. So again, supernatural themes here. If we go back to the meaning of superstition and we think about the origins of where these superstitions come from, that we carry on as kind of habit and folklore, they kind of always stem from fear, right? Fear of receiving bad luck, fear of pissing off the gods, And that really comes from fear of the unknown. We fear unknown outcomes. We fear unknown entities and energies. So our need for superstition, or our attraction to superstition, really stems from fear. On the one hand, superstitions can be quite harmless. They can be comforting, actually. So it can be superstitious to carry a charm or amulet or crystal for protection or good luck. This is something that you might carry in your pocket or in your handbag or keep in your car. Another common superstition we see with sports people, they might have a winning pair of undies that they must wear every game to help them feel like they're going to win. It could be comforting to have a prayer card that had been gifted to you by a family member, or some kind of pendant when you're traveling. a lot of Christians carry these, but also a lot of people who aren't necessarily Christians but feel comforted by having that extra layer of protection when they travel. That is a practice in my family. When me and my siblings went on our first overseas trips, my dad gifted us a pendant to keep us safe. It comforted him and it helped us feel in connection with our parents, which is a really beautiful tradition, actually. So yeah, seeking that connection with the divine, whether it's that divine connection of love with my parents through our little travel pendants, or it's just wanting to feel safe and in control, that's pretty harmless. But it becomes problematic when superstitions start controlling our actions, our behaviors. And this is really disempowering because it's a constant holding of the vibration of fear. So if you're too superstitious or overly superstitious, you're always seeking protection, and you are always either consciously or subconsciously expecting to be under some kind of attack, which could be bad luck in the physical reality, or it could be energetic attack. So I'm talking about needing constant protection from evil eye or curses, or always feeling like you're cursed in some way, always feeling like you're under some kind of psychic attack, feeling like bad vibes are being sent your way constantly, feeling scared of contact with malevolent beings. So this can be, when you have so much fear or apprehension about what might happen to you in the dream state, that it makes it hard to sleep. Being haunted in your house or in your space, and just generally expecting things to go wrong. This is something that fuels up during Mercury retrograde, for instance, when all of the memes on social media are just all about all the things going wrong and how you can just blame everything for Mercury retrograde, and really announcing when bad luck's going to begin. I find that overly superstitious myself, and I don't believe in it. Now, that's not to say these things don't exist. People can be cursed. People can be under psychic attack. People can be intentionally sending bad vibes your way. You can have really scary interactions in the dream state or in an unconscious state with external entities. You can have spirits in your house. All of these things are real. It's just that we don't want to be living in a constant state of fear of them that requires us to be protected at all times. I think that's disempowering, and that's lowering our vibration, when the best protection we can have is having a high vibe. And so I deal with superstition in my job as a tarot reader. When clients are overly superstitious, they may seek out someone like me frequently. And it's because they often lack a trust in their own intuition, that they perhaps also lack a belief that the universe is a good supportive place. They might also come seeking to be told what they wish to hear rather than what they need to hear, because what they need to hear is scary and they have a fear of that unknown. And so this energy of being overly superstitious, it actually often can feel like an energy of desperation. It's a desperation to know, to be in control. And so it's good to have an awareness of this. What actually is happening energetically when you become overly superstitious, when you become overly fearful, when you become overly scared of the unknown, you become desperate to know, you become desperate to control. And this is in itself a low vibration. I want to say as well that this vibration is not in resonance with me, because I like to work with people who are ready to empower themselves, that are ready to hear the hard messages, that are ready to receive what their guides need them to hear, what their soul needs them to hear. So for me in my work, energetic work, it's a partnership. I don't see myself as above the Quirin in any way. I'm just an interpreter of their energy. I'm no more powerful or knowing than they are. I just have the language to interpret the energy. And I've developed the senses of clairaudience and claircognizance enough to be able to harness the information and interpret it so that it can be understood. I don't want people to be outsourcing their power to me. I want them to come and leave empowered. I want them to feel uplifted by what their soul needs them to hear. Even if the message is challenging, my intention is always to be empowering. So I think it's also a superstition to place a psychic or a reader above yourself, because the person, and you've heard me speak about this now in previous episodes about intuition, about self-sovereignty, the person that knows best about you and your journey is you. And sometimes it's hard to hear that voice of your soul, that voice of truth. And that's why people like me can help you tune into it a bit more clearly. But as a being, as a soul, I'm no higher than you. I'm no more than you. We are all equal. I may hold a higher frequency, and my intention when you join me is to bring you into that frequency, to lift you up into that frequency. It's always an intention of mine whenever I meet with a client. I understand that people see what I do as superstitious, and I also understand that people who are superstitious come to me seeking guidance. And I also understand that what I do is a divination practice. And so just to be clear on what divination is, it's the act of foreseeing the future by way of ritual or supernatural or occult processes, which sounds pretty extreme, but it's pretty right. And while many would see me as a fortune teller, it's really not how I like to describe myself at all. However, I'm quite okay with calling what I do divination. And this is because I believe and agree that I'm making contact with a divine power. Yet I have a completely different opinion about being called a fortune teller, even though by definition they mean very similar things. And this has a lot to do with, again, my beliefs about energy and my beliefs about time. So I don't see a single vision of the future. Therefore, I can't tell your future. I don't believe that time is linear. I believe that time works in cycles and that there are countless possible timelines. I want to say infinite possible timelines. At any moment, anything is possible for every single one of us. And at every moment, we're presented with the opportunity to change our fortune, to change our future, impact our future in some way. And we are the ones who shape our path. So I don't believe in fate. I don't believe that our future is fated. I do believe, though, that we have a destiny. We each have a destiny. And how I describe that destiny is that we each have lessons we're here to learn and a mission, a sacred mission that we set out to achieve before we arrive here. But how we experience those lessons and how we align with that mission and execute on that mission can change at any moment. And those things are really up to us to define in our lifetime. So for all these reasons, I don't believe in telling someone's fortune, because any fortune's possible. And I'm also really aware of my influence as a guide, as a tarot reader, as an intuitive, in influencing someone's belief in what's possible. And the way I describe this is the self-fulfilling prophecy. If someone with prophetic authority tells you that something bad is going to happen, then you're likely going to believe it. And the more superstitious you are, the more likely you're going to believe it. And when you have a belief, it's incredibly powerful, because what you believe, you make real. And if you believe that something bad's going to happen, then you're going to attract that reality. And you know what? You may have been destined to learn something from that bad happening. That bad happening might be allotted into every single timeline that's in front of you. But it's also very possible that you may have been able to avoid a bad happening by altering your decisions and aligning with a higher timeline. And so it's not to say that these events are terrible and they shouldn't happen. the fact that they're on a timeline at all means that there's something that you can learn from them, but they don't necessarily have to happen. You can learn your lessons in lots of different ways. So I really don't want to create self-fulfilling prophecies for others. That's just not in alignment with my own mission. Telling someone their future is not in alignment with my own mission, even when they're seeking that from me. So it's something really important to know about my work. Having said that, I don't have any judgment at all on other readers, on other fortune tellers, on psychics. I know some really good psychics who are excellent fortune tellers, and it's because their skill of vision is incredibly well developed. They're very gifted, but also because the way that they deliver it is through messages of empowerment rather than just dumping a prophecy on you and having you deal with it in a way that creates fear. So I just want to say that it's not that I don't believe that others can't see this. They can. There's definitely a responsibility on the reader to be delivering this message to you in a way that's empowering rather than disempowering. And like I said, it's just not something that I'm aligned with personally, but I respect that in those who do that work because it's very powerful, important work. The work of the seer, the work of the oracle, the work of the prophet, the work of the psychic visionary, that's all sacred work. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that's not my sacred work. My sacred work is much more about helping people create their own visions and align with that highest vision they have for themselves. And that when you encounter any type of guide or energetic worker who does deliver prophecy, that it's really your responsibility to use your discernment in what information you take on board and how you take that on board and how you actually react to it. What actions do you take after receiving that message? It's really important to check what information you get. The information I deliver is included in this. The information that you are receiving from outside of you with your own truth, with your intuition, with your inner knowing. And if it doesn't feel right, if it feels disempowering, if it's making you feel stressed, if it's creating pressure in your life, it's probably not in alignment with you. And it's up to you to take action on those feelings, to honor those feelings. However, when you meet a really good reader, they're going to deliver what they see in your future as potential or highly probable timelines. If there's something of note, I've been watching a lot of Tyler Henry recently, who's the Hollywood medium, and he's really great at this. He delivers some quite potentially stressful health information sometimes, but he does it in a way that empowers the person receiving the reading. He says, in the future, you may have some issues with this particular area of your body. So you want to be proactive in getting regular checks with your doctor or not eating this particular food. So he's taking something that could potentially be quite scary and creates a fear frequency in the person receiving that message and turns it into something much more empowering where they can take positive action to align with their highest timeline. So I thought now would be a good time to share some examples from my own life of where I've dealt with the incredibly powerful vibration of superstition and the types of things that it can attract. So the story I'm about to share is a very important lesson I learned very early in life about the power of the self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll probably expand on it in future episodes because it's actually quite a traumatic event for me and something that I've only really dealt with properly in recent years. It's also incredibly fascinating and honestly quite superstitious in itself, which is kind of funny. But it has to do with holy rituals. It has to do with fortune telling, and it has to do with my overly superstitious energy as a child. So when I was 8 or 8-ish, I went to a Catholic school, and it's at this time when you go through the ritual of your first Holy Communion. And this wasn't as important as it probably is in other families who are much more Catholic than my family was. But nonetheless, I went through this ritual. I'd been baptized and I was in the school and my parents wanted me to go through this. I was a child, so I guess I didn't really have any say in it. But as a very small child, I was actually really devoted and religious. I prayed a lot and I believed in all that I was taught at school. And I was already holding a sense of strangeness, I guess, about the fact that my parents weren't so religious, that they didn't go to church, whereas all the other parents at school did. They didn't take me to church, so I felt like I was already a sinner at such a young age. And I'd apologize a lot to God for not going to church in my prayers, promising that in the future, in my adult life, I'd go to church all the time. So that was kind of the energy I was already holding, a bit of uncertainty, a bit of feeling out of place amongst the community that was much more devoted than my family. So that's kind of the background energy. And at this time, even though I was only 8 years old, I loved reading and I loved being up to date with stuff. I would flip through the paper. My dad would buy the newspaper every day and I would flip through it. The first pages I'd go to would be the kind of kids' puzzle pages, which were in the center of the paper. There were puzzles and cartoons, so I'd start there. And on those entertainment pages, there were horoscopes. So I started reading my daily horoscope at a really young age. And I guess I found it fascinating. I guess I believed it or held some kind of belief in it. I didn't really know how strong that belief was until this event occurred. But so the week of my Holy Communion arrives. And in the days leading up to the Holy Communion, I read my horoscope and I was told that something bad was going to happen in the coming days. And I became terrified. Kids believe very easily, right? And so I just believed. I had utter belief that something bad was going to happen and that every day that led up to the event, I was becoming more and more worried about what was going to happen. And so I already was kind of holding feelings of sort of shame and guilt, which are low vibrations. And then I had adopted this prophecy that something bad was going to happen. And now we know about the law of attraction and resonance, that if that's what you believe, that's like what's likely to occur. And come the day of my Holy Communion, I don't remember much, but something incredibly powerful and traumatic happened that day. I received the sacrament, which is when you take the body of Christ, the host, the bread, that little disc on your tongue. So I was initiated. This was a day of initiation for me. And I was initiated into the church as, I guess, worthy of taking the body of Christ. And after that, all the children were ushered onto the altar to sing hymns. And I was, it's something we practiced in the church for, the weeks before. We were all ready to go. Different, though, on the day was that there were candles at either end of the altar. I was placed next to one of them. And we were all wearing our fine satin and my dress lit up. I caught fire in the church during my Holy Communion. It's quite an incredible story. I know it's a very unique story. It became a party trick when I was hanging out with metal guys to tell them about how I caught fire in a church. I think that was such a cool story. And I had lots of fans, but it actually was a hugely traumatic event in my life. It led me to shut down my gifts, my psychic gifts that were just a normal part of my life at that time, of clairaudience, of hearing stuff. It shut down my interest in astrology very quickly. I all of a sudden was like, after, weeks of kind of healing, I received pretty bad burns to my back. I had to go to hospital. The trauma means that I don't remember my time there. I don't really remember what happened at all. I just remember snippets. And like really what I remember carrying after that event took place was really intense shame and guilt about why this happened to me. So I saw the power in astrology, that it was something potentially quite evil and I should never look at again, because it was very, very powerful as a form of divination. I didn't see the divinity in it, but I saw it as an incredibly powerful form of divination. And I also just started to harbor, it took years to shift this. It wasn't until I think I went to high school that I really started to reject religion and started to see the negligence in what had occurred, that was completely devoid of compassion and love and care, and that I was no longer going to outsource any authority to any kind of church. I was probably atheist for a little while there because of that. But I held really intense guilt and shame. Why did this happen to me? I was punished by God. I was punished by God on this most sacred of days for not being a good enough Catholic, for my family not taking me to church. And after that spiraled me into like a very long period of praying my apologies and wanting to make up for whatever it was that I'd done wrong. So in sharing that story, honestly, it has been a little bit difficult to share because it's not something I share very often, even though for a little while I did find it to be a cool story with a lot of shock value. That was kind of smoothing over my trauma, I guess. And in recent years, I've dealt with that much more directly, which has been really healing for me. And part of the healing is to be speaking up on this podcast, actually. So this is going to be a really cathartic episode for me in sharing this story with you all. Clearing out my throat chakra of all those times in my childhood where I suppressed what I wanted to say because of what happened to me. So yeah, the superstition that I carried in the lead up to the day, definitely I believed helped to create this self-fulfilling prophecy that attracted a negative event to happen to me, that caused me trauma, but it also was one of the greatest lessons and challenges in my life. What is trauma? What is trauma that's held in the physical body? This was inflicted upon my body. What is it to heal? What is it to have others help you heal? All of those things, incredibly important on my path of destiny, but probably also could have been avoided. On another timeline, I went through that ritual and perhaps I would have come out of it a devout Catholic, or I could have come out of it and continued my studies of astrology and become an astrologer at like 20. Who knows? But this is what happened and I'm totally fine with it now. And so this experience with self-fulfilling prophecy really informs how I work with others when it comes to energy, that I don't want to be putting or planting any seeds of doubt or disempowerment in anyone's energy field, in anyone's mind. I want them to see the potential of all that is possible, help uplift them at a vibrational level, help provide them with insight and guidance that their soul wants them to hear right now, and allow them to find the way to their highest path. So I've also got some examples of the importance of having a high vibration and using it as the best form of protection energetically. I've had spirits in my home. I lived in an old warehouse for a little while and some crazy, crazy stuff would happen to me in that place. I would have my stereo turned on full blast in the middle of the night, which would echo through the whole warehouse. And it wouldn't be some nice calming space music. It would be static. It would be very alarming. I would hear footsteps constantly in that place. And I had events where working with that stereo, that conduit of energy, that communication device, once I was standing near it and I had a speaker fly off the shelves with such force in my direction. It didn't hit me, it went over me and smashed onto the floor. Crazy, crazy stuff happened in that place. And I did hold fear sometimes, but not as much as you'd think. And I lived there alone for a fair chunk of that time, definitely while all these spirits were hanging around. But I think it was my high vibration that allowed me to coexist without fear, without feeling scared in my own home. I still felt safe in my own home. I just felt disrupted, I guess you would say. So in not being afraid and in having a high vibration, I really did trust that even if we were sharing a space, if I could sense their presence, it wasn't going to hurt me in any way, even when they're throwing stuff at me. It also led me to feeling brave enough to communicate with the spirits. So I really do believe in the power of consent, and I did not consent to them haunting my space. I was okay with sharing the space as long as it wasn't so disruptive. And so I wasn't afraid. I had those conversations. I literally talked to the spirits. I asked them to converse with me and to listen to me. I commanded them to respect me because I believed I had that power to do that. And I asked them to leave if they weren't willing to do that. And things calmed down so much after that point. I also used some traditional methods to clear the space of any low vibrational frequencies that may be hanging out there. I use sound and smoke to do that, and I'll go through those methods in more detail in a little bit. I've also encountered some really dark energies in the dream state. There's been some really profound dreams I've had that felt very real. One of them, dreams within dreams, like the movie Inception. If you remember that, needing to escape from multiple levels of dreams. And while they were some scary dreams, one in particular, I really do believe my high vibration in my physical life is also what is held by my soul and my subconscious, that I am empowering my subconscious to have a high vibration in my dream state as well, by harnessing and anchoring that high vibration in my daily waking life. And so in one of these dreams, I was somewhere I knew I shouldn't have been, somewhere very dark, somewhere very dense, so dense that there was no light there. I couldn't actually see what was happening. I could only hear and sense what was happening. And I heard and sensed an entity on a throne telling another entity that I shouldn't be there. She can't be here. I knew this. I knew that I'd stumbled onto somewhere where I didn't want to be, and I didn't want to know what was happening in that place. And I found a way to leave of my own accord by lucidly interacting in the dream and helping myself leave. And so this was also really powerful because a lot of people can hold fear around the energies they encounter in the dream state. And I want to say from my own personal experience that the power of holding a high vibration as often as you can, as often as reasonable in your waking life will also help you in your subconscious dream state. And I know this to be true. This was proven to me by that dream because the reason I wasn't allowed to be in wherever that place was because I held too much light. They could sense my presence and they couldn't have me there for that reason. And so even if that experience wasn't literally real, it's still a very powerful message and lesson. And I definitely was scared in the dream, but I didn't hold fear afterwards because I was able to navigate out and afterwards reflect on what happened in that dream and what I learned from it. And the lesson was really powerful. So that leads me to the topic of energetic protection. We seek energetic protection when we have superstitions. We've talked about superstitions now. And I feel like I've probably given you more than enough reason to seek to have a high vibration as your first field of defense when it comes to energetic protection. But there's also other times when we need something extra. And from my perspective, rather than this being sought in a superstitious manner, I think it's much more effective to have a proactive approach to energetic protection in a form of awareness of your energy field. So rather than feeling like there's negative entities who are out there to get you, or there's a whole horde of people giving you the evil eye, I think it's much more helpful to just be real about the fact that you can attempt to maintain a high vibration as often as possible. However, there's going to be situations where your energy field is going to be under the influence of someone else's or of the collective. So some really good examples of this is being in large crowds. A lot of people who have an energetic awareness find large crowds to be really challenging, that it is highly depleting of the energy fields, that it can cause the vibration to drop, and therefore you drop into emotional states of anxiety and of stress, for instance. So crowds are an important time when we should all think about and prepare to protect our energy as best as we can. Other examples are when you need to go and engage with people you know hold a lower vibration than you, and that just by being in the presence, it's possible that there's going to be a kind of seepage, energetic seepage. Firstly, it's great to be prepared for this and to have a strong resolve in keeping a high vibration while you're in their presence, but you can also engage methods, energetic protection methods, to help shield yourself from their energy. Another time that's really useful to use energetic protection practices is during ritual, especially if you're someone who's doing spell work or opening any kind of portals to protect yourself and your space, and especially like those other people who share the space with you who may not be engaging in those rituals with you. It's a very responsible thing to do and a very sensible thing to do to protect your energy. There's also times when you know that you experience low states, that you might get triggered into low states around certain people, or that just going to, say, a job that you don't love, that you kind of hate, that grinds on you, that drains your energy, is something that you have to do on a regular basis, and that it's really challenging to keep a high vibe when you're needing to go to that place around those people, doing that thing that you'd rather not be doing. So that's also a really great time to protect your energy. And so there's many methods you can use. There's visualizations, there's spells and sigils that are designed to protect. There's meditative practices while you're in the moment, breath work, embodiment. There's all sorts of things you can be doing to kind of guard and protect your energy and keep it as high as possible, and keep it shielded from negative influence. I'm just going to share a few that I find really effective as an extra layer of protection. The first is crystals. I love working with crystals. I'm not necessarily someone who carries them all the time, but I do love a good black crystal for transmuting negative energy. I feel like it acts almost like a vacuum that helps to draw any negative energies coming your way into the crystal rather than into your field. And my favorites for this are black tourmaline and black obsidian. I think they're both really powerful in transmuting energy and offering protection. So if you can carry them in your pockets, I have a large tourmaline on a leather strap that I wear around my neck, which feels like it's a part of me. Very powerful. You might have one on your desk at work. There's lots of ways to do it. Tektite is also really powerful at transmuting negative energy, or just some good old plain clear quartz is really effective as well. The Master Crystal, Master Cleanser, clear quartz is just wonderful. So if you like working with crystals, they're my tips. Another method anyone can do, it's completely free. It's visualization, and it's visualization of a protective dome of light. So basically, wherever you're at, if you're in a place where you feel like you need some extra protection, this could be at work, this could be at home. A lot of people do this before they go to sleep. If they are very active dreamers, or they may experience nightmares, night terrors, it's a good thing to do. So it's really simple. All you need to do is imagine a dome of light or a bubble of light. Sometimes I even imagine a pyramid of light. It can be pure white light. It can be golden light, shimmery golden light, but something that holds a pure frequency. You place this dome over wherever it is that you are, that you want to protect. You're making a sacred force field around yourself that can't be penetrated by any low frequency vibration or entity or intention. And so you're thinking about the strength of this dome as you're visualizing it being created around you. I really like to add an extra step of watching it be sealed. So the dome, the bottom of the dome coming into contact with the earth, and it creating a seal, a sacred seal that definitely can't be penetrated. You can also call on Archangel Michael if you're into working with angels and archangels. You can call on him to guard your dome, as he is a protector. Another method of protection that I really like using is flower essences. These work by harmonizing your energy field. So they're really great to have on hand in case you encounter some energies that lower your vibes. And it's as easy as keeping a treatment bottle in your purse or your car or your first aid kit or your desk in your office. And they're really easy to take. They work very quickly. When you feel out of balance, add 4 drops under the tongue. And any discordant states in your energy bodies will be harmonized so that your energy can be uplifted to a higher vibration. The last tip I want to leave you with is super simple. It's wearing a hat or a hood or a headscarf. So this is especially useful for anyone who has a fairly active crown chakra or upper chakras in general, but especially crown. If you feel like you are open to the influence of, normally that's higher energies. However, sometimes we can feel really vulnerable around our crowns. So if you are going into a space or a situation where you feel like you would like your upper chakras protected, and really that's about containing your energy within you, not allowing that to leave until you're ready for it to leave, and being in control of what comes through as well, your upper chakras from above. So all you need to do is cover the top of your head. The easiest way to do it is with a hat or a beanie. But you can use a hood, you can use a scarf. Okay, I thought the head coverings was the last tip, but I have another one. And it's cats. Cats are energetic protectors. They are guards. If you have a cat or live with a cat or have ever lived with a cat, you may have noticed them have interesting behaviors. And I've come to realize this living with my current cat, Bread, my little soulmate Bread, who engages in what I call cat magic. He does protective walks around the house to assess and banish, I believe, energy. He's like a little energetic guard. He also sits on the end of my bed. I watch him tracking energy. I've never really seen a cat do it the way Bread does it. So he's probably here to teach me something really important about energy, actually. But this is something that all cats do. I've received guidance on this, and I'll probably do a whole separate episode about cats as energy workers because I just love cats. I've always loved cats, and I have a very deep, potentially even celestial connection to cats. So that's one. And I have a final bonus tip to end on, and this is about Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde holds a lot of power over, I want to say, astrology noobs. Basically, people who are really getting into astrology, love their horoscopes, learning a bit about the moon phases and planetary movements. And one of the first things you learn when you hear about Mercury is the fact that it goes into retrograde and it makes the world a bit crazy. Things break, you make mistakes, it affects technology, and all those things are true to some extent. But again, you definitely can attract more chaotic energy into your life, especially at times of Mercury retrograde, if that's what you're expecting. So the first thing I want to say is that Mercury retrograde happens 3 to 4 times a year. It lasts for, I think, around 22 days each time. So it's not like it's never happened before. And it's not like the whole world goes into shutdown periods where we don't drive on the roads, we don't use our technology, we don't sign contracts, we don't do banking, all of those things. The world keeps turning, right? So we don't want to allow a concept like Mercury retrograde, an external energy, to control us. It can definitely inform what we do. You know, we might decide to schedule things at more beneficial times to make use of other beneficial energies. However, I don't think we need to expect everything to break as soon as Mercury goes into retrograde. And we don't do it for the other planets. Other planets go into retrograde too. And retrograde, all that means is that from our aspect on Earth, looking up at the celestial bodies, at the planets, depending on who's orbiting when, it can appear that planets move backwards from our point of view. And so in these times of backwards movement, that is what we call a retrograde. And so even knowing what that means can hold some power for you when you're like, oh, I can understand that that's not some demonic force when everything's sent backwards. It's just our perspective here on Earth, and it teaches us something. It teaches us to be mindful of how we communicate. It asks us to re-examine, revise, re-look at. Any re-words are great to do in the Mercury retrograde, or any retrograde really. So depending on what that planet governs, that's the integration time to apply some re-words, re-examine, refresh, all those things, the area of your life that planetary energy is going to be influencing. So again, try to turn this into an empowering energy. The second thing that I want to state about Mercury retrograde is that some of us hold a superpower when it comes to retrograde energy, and it all is told in your birth chart. So I encourage you all to go and check out your natal charts and see if any planets, especially Mercury, were in retrograde at the time of your birth. Because if that's the case, you may just find that you were literally born for those times, that it's completely natural for you to be in that planetary retrograde, and that the energies that feel chaotic for others may not feel so chaotic for you. that can become your superpower. So I was born during a Mercury retrograde, and I'm sure some of you were too, because like I said, it happens 3 or 4 times a year, depending on the year, and it lasts for almost a month. So there's a good chunk of time where many of you guys were probably born during a Mercury retrograde, and you don't have to worry about that energy playing with you anymore. So really, being informed is empowering, and being ignorant is definitely disempowering. So if there's anything that you hold a superstition about, or an irrational fear about, look into it, because as I said on the last episode, fear is where the breakthrough happens. And this can also be things that you're irrationally scared of. If you're holding superstition and you don't know why, have a look at it, do some research, and you might find that process to provide you with a little more empowerment. I mentioned quite a bit about my tarot reading in this episode today. If this is something that vibed with you, my approach to tarot and how I like to work, then get in touch. I offer soul transmission readings, which is a mashup of tarot and Akashic records channeling. I can do this via email, or you can book a one-on-one session with me via video call, where I can do a soul map reading, which is pretty fun. So both of my readings are transmissions from your soul, from your spirit guides, from your team of higher guidance, to deliver exactly what it is that you need to hear right now in order to move forward in alignment with your highest timeline, with your highest path of destiny. So if you'd like to journey with me, send me a message on Instagram. It's at the Initiates Podcast, or just check out the show notes. I'll leave a link in there to my booking page. I also mentioned flower remedies as a form of energetic protection. So this is also something I offer. If you'd like to purchase a flower remedy, some good ones to recommend are rescue remedy for times of acute stress or anxiety or panic. I've also got an incredible blend called Aura Cleanse, which does exactly that. It's just a beautiful cleanse of the aura of the energetic field. Those are available for sale. Just go to flowerguide.com.au. or check the link in the show notes. All right. Thanks again for joining me, and until next week, peace.